Thank you so much for inviting me. This is so exciting. All of you, this is so exciting. I'm really honored to be here and be part of this and figure out how to fight back. Western Pennsylvania is at war. This is war. This is guerrilla warfare that they're playing on you. And guess what? You're acting like polite people. And that's why you get poisoned. Polite people get poisoned. It's the truth. It's a proven fact. Some scientists or sociologists will figure it out one day and do a study and get an award or something. But it's really true. So, and I never believed that back in the day, right? I never believed that. I was just like all of you in the Southwest. Am I in your way?
No, I'm sorry. I'll give you this mic.
The Southwest, all right, mic me up.
Yeah.
Southwest Pennsylvania Neighbors for Clean Air campaign are wiring Lois. And you can take this one?
No, you'll need this too. That's for the camera.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm really wired. All right. So thank you. We need to figure out how to fight. So I was like you. I was like you, except I wasn't from a rural area, although I grew up on an island. It's not really a rural area, but there wasn't a store on it, and there wasn't a gas station, and there wasn't anything. So I considered it pretty rural, even though it was in the Buffalo area. I believed in the system. I believed in the democratic system. I believed if I voted, like my mama told me to vote, I've changed that mind. But if I voted, and if I behaved and played by the rules, I would prosper. I believed that. And when I found out about Love Canal in my neighborhood, and everybody else knew it, I stopped being a believer. When I moved into my house in Niagara Falls with my healthy one-year-old child, he was healthy. He was ugly. He was the ugliest baby ever. But he was healthy. He was a healthy ugly. He's handsome now. No one told me what was going on. Just like the witness said. No one told me. I picked up a newspaper one day and found out about it in the same way a lot of you probably found out about what nastiness is happening in your neighborhood or your community. I read the newspaper and it was like, what? This is underneath the school that my 5-year-old son was attending. 20,000 tons of chemicals buried beneath the school. My healthy son, and I later had a daughter at Love Canal, who was born healthy and also got sick. But my healthy son, by the time he attended kindergarten, 4 years, he developed epilepsy, where you would have grand mal seizures. He developed asthma. He developed a urinary tract problem, which required 2 surgeries to correct. He developed a liver problem, and he had a suppressed immune system similar to what you see in HIV victims. I thought I was doing something wrong because we as moms are really good at guilt, right? So I looked to see, what was going on, and I thought, well, maybe it's a bad, a bad gene. Well, I know I have none, just in case anybody was curious. But I'm sure my husband had them all. So I went to my husband's family and said, you guys got epilepsy, seizures? You have this? Do you have? No. Well, Uncle George died of cirrhosis of the liver, but I think it's different. There was no history. When my child went to the 99th Street School for kindergarten, he got worse. And when I read about what was going on in the newspaper, I went to the newspaper reporter and said, you're talking about a report. What is that report you referred to? Can I get a copy of it? Now, mind you, I was a quiet, shy woman, not this other thing. Whatever. Advocate, yeah. And so it was really hard to go talk to a stranger. How many people love to talk to strangers the first time? Oh, this is a good group. You guys are really going to kick butt. So I went and I got this report and I read through the report. And the report, this was done in 1976, right? Now it's 1978, before some of you were born. In this report that was done 2 years before the newspaper article, before I knew anything, in this report they talked about Love Canal. They talked about 20,000 tons of chemicals moving out of this rectangular hole in the ground into the community. They talked about the chemicals that were seeping into people's homes exceeded a level that would be safe if it was a grown man in a chemical factory. Exceeded those levels. They talked about all of these things, these chemicals I could not pronounce and could not understand. And I read this and it was very frightening. And I got frightened. Because what does this mean? What does this mean for me and my child? I was only thinking of me. When I went to the back of the report, then I'm Irish. I married a Greek, though, and we had Easter last weekend in New Hampshire. When I read the back of the report, that's when I really became angry. In the back of the report, it talked about these chemicals moving out of the dump and into people's homes. It talked about men, women, and children, especially pregnant women, being exposed to these chemicals. And it talked about possible solutions to the problem. And they listed them, everything from do nothing to put a cap and a trench around Love Canal. And by doing that, they would stop it from moving out and hopefully be able to draw some of it back in. Right behind the solutions part, the possible ways they could deal with it, was a thing that they called cost-benefit analysis. And I read the cost-benefit analysis, and it took me a lot of reading. I read it and reread it. I am a high school graduate. I have a high school education, and I didn't even like school, so I'm really smart, but I didn't do well. And I read it 3 or 4 times to finally understand what they were talking about. What they were talking about is what they're doing in every single community in Southwest Pennsylvania. What they did is they figured out how many people are likely to get sick, how many people are likely to die. And then based on how many people are likely to get sick and based on how many people are likely to die, what would be the loss? The loss is counted not in what you as a family, you as a person provide to a community or your family. They said it would cost $20 million to clean up Love Canal at that time. And they figured the 800 families who lived around this were not worth spending $20 million. That is a cost-benefit analysis. They don't think 800 men, women, and children are worth $20 million of taxpayers' money. And that was the conclusion they made, and they closed the drawer and left us there not knowing we were even exposed. When I read that, nobody puts $1 on my kid's head. Nobody puts $1 on my husband's head. Nobody puts a dollar amount on my neighbor's head or my friends. And that's exactly what they're doing in the clean air issues. That's exactly what they're doing in the fracking issues and the pipeline issues. They have all their risk assessments and all their chances and all the potential for harm and what it would cost and to whom it would cost. The whom matters too. So anyhow, I read this thing and I got really angry. I mean, really angry. And so the first thing I did, because I was by myself reading this crazy document, I went to the school board and I said to the school board, move Michael out of the school. There's 20,000 tons of chemicals in there. This report validates that. There's no reason children should be in the school, but certainly no reason for Michael because he's special. He's sicker than the others, so I thought. And I truly believe that, by the way. As embarrassing as that is for me to say, I truly believe that. The school board said, jump through these hoops, bring me these doctor's statements, do this, do that, and the other thing, and then I'll consider it. And I jumped through every single one of those hoops. How many hoops have you all jumped through? Every single hoop, right? How many of you have gone to your permit hearings? Council hearings? Those are hoops, right? Comments. How many of you got to talk more than 3 minutes? Not many. Those were hoops, but they're really rules. They are rules of behavior for us, created by people who want to control us and control what happens in your community. When they have a public hearing, there is absolutely nothing, and I checked this twice. There's absolutely nothing in the Constitution of the United States of America that says people can only speak for 3 minutes. And there is nothing in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's documents that says the industry has to speak first. Right? But more often than not, not always, but more often than not, we play by their rules. The first lesson we learned at Love Canal is don't play by their rules. Their rules are set up to control you. It's hard. It's hard. I get that. I was there. So what do you do instead? So couple of the other rules, things that we learned at Love Canal, which I think are also important, and then we can talk about what to do. I believed that all we have to do, and my community too, when I say I'm really talking about the community, that all we have to do is prove that there will be harm. If we collect the data and we show those decision makers, those in authority, that the data shows we are being harmed. My son is sick. My neighbor is sick. Luella Kenny lost her 4-year-old baby. People are being, if we collect that data and we present it to them, they'll see the light. And if we present it to Occidental Petroleum, they'll do something different. It's just not so. So we collected our data. We found that 56% of the children at Love Canal, born at Love Canal during this 4-year period, 56% of our children were born with birth defects, including 3 ears, double rows of teeth, extra fingers, extra toes, or were mentally retarded. During the same study period of 4 years, we looked at women who were pregnant. And of the women who were pregnant, there were 22 women pregnant, but out of those 22 pregnancies, we only got 4 normal babies. The rest of those children, the rest of those babies, were born birth defected, stillborn, or were miscarried. These are the calculations in their risk-benefit analysis, right? They calculated how many babies were going to die, how many pregnancies were going to end not so well, how many children were going to be birth defected, and how much it would cost society to deal with those birth defected children. That's in their numbers. That's in their numbers for the Falcon pipeline. It's in their numbers for the fracking wells. It's in their numbers going underneath the water that people drink from the reservoir. It's in their numbers. They have the numbers. They know. When we presented these numbers to the state health department, the decision maker, they looked at it and they said to us, This is useless housewife data collected by people who have a vested interest in the outcome. Now, exactly why is it when the energy companies present their data, you think it was the closest thing to the Bible? It's got lots of footnotes and stuff in it, right? Why is the industry data always not put in question, and our data from some of the top scientists, top engineers in this country who have volunteered to help us, or some of them actually got paid, is slanted with advocacy science? Do you see? They frame the narrative to control, so people won't believe your data in your community. Well, the other one said, no. That's their narrative. That's the message they're sending. That's why people are confused, because they hear the dueling experts. So in any case, I was really angry because I'm Irish. And so when he said that about useless housewife data, he threw it literally on the floor. And so I picked it up and put it back on the table and said, we will talk about this. If you do not believe our data, you are welcome to bring in your scientists and prove us wrong. And they did bring in their scientists. So you think if their scientists come in and they find exactly what you find, right, that the decision will change. You got the data, they confirmed your data, and so things get different, things get better, things happen in a direction you want it to go. So at Love Canal, they brought in their epidemiologists and I can say that now, which I'm really proud of. Couldn't say it at all. And their statisticians and all the folks who do this kind of work, good folks doing this work. And they called me up and they said, okay, we're going to have a community meeting, and we'll have it at the school, the polluted school. We'll have it at the polluted school, and bring your folks out, blah, 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 blah. We're going to release the health study results. And I said, great. He says, Lois, you know what? You're not going to be surprised by these results. I said, really? He said, yeah. They're just like what you found. I'm like, what, do you think we were making it up? Like, we're talking about birth defects of children, pregnancies that didn't end well. Like, so they came to our elementary school in our neighborhood, and they stood on stage, and all of the scientists spoke first about their methodology and their protocols and all this other stuff no one understood, no one cared about. And then after they got done doing that, the fellow came up front and gave us the results. And they said, interesting enough, we found that 56% of the children born at Love Canal were born with birth defects. And we're thinking, okay, this is bad, but it's good, right? I mean, this is the thing about our data, right? It's like, yeah, oh yeah, this is really, no, it's really bad, but it's confusing. So then they talked about miscarriages and stillborn babies and so forth. And they confirmed all of our findings. So we're thinking, because we think government works, we think this is what you do. You get the data, you provide the data, they confirm the data, the problem is there, harm has been done, help will come. That's the way I was taught. Well, after they got done presenting all the data that matched our data, they said, however, we don't believe these impacts, health impacts, are related to Love Canal, the 20,000 tons of chemicals in the center of the community. It's like, what? We believe it's related to a random clustering of genetically defective people. Yep. It was heartbreaking. It was frustrating. I mean, how do you respond to that? Like, what do you like? How do you respond? We're from New York. We're more radical than you, and we did respond with tomatoes. We had tomatoes. We responded with tomatoes. Tomatoes were poison tomatoes from our gardens. We couldn't eat them. We gifted them. So, but we understood a couple things about the data. is that the data actually is critically important, because we do need to support what we're saying. We do need to show that if that pipeline goes underneath the reservoir, that it's more likely than not to create a problem. We do have to show that the particles in the air coming down are a problem because they're giving people asthma. We do have to use the data. My point here is that the data will not set you free. The data will provide you with backup, with support for your goals of not putting the pipeline by the reservoir, or getting the steel mill to clean up the air, or whatever that is you're fighting. The data is critically important, and I don't want to dismiss the data. But it is not the thing that's going to change it. It is going to provide you a tool in your toolbox. But it's not the screwdriver or the hammer, right? So the other thing we thought at Love Canal is that we could fight it legally. You have 20,000 tons of chemicals in the center of a community. You've got a community who's really sick. You've got this data now. So we went to talk with a lawyer, and I get really excited. So when I'm telling the story, I don't like jump. And the lawyer's like, sit down, sit down, sit down. So, and I said, what? It must be illegal to poison people. I mean, I just think that this is America. Everybody sues everybody over coffee spilling on them or whatever. It must be illegal to poison people. And he said, no. It is not illegal in this country to poison people. Did you know that? Who knew that? When you're looking at your permit, your air permit, your water permit, all those permits, give permission to the company to put chemicals in the environment, air, water, soil, that will not kill more than 1 in a million people. Some states are lower than that. Is yours 1 in a million or 1 in 10,000? Your air risk? Don't know. Some of them are lower than that. The permit actually gives them permission to kill. That's not in the Constitution either, that we should give permission to industry to take our innocent lives. So when you are looking at a permit and reviewing a permit and asking your lawyers to do this, and I know there's a lot of really good ones in Pennsylvania, remember what they're doing. They're looking at flaws in the permit as a regulatory handle, but they're also realizing that they're killing people, right? The company, not the lawyers. Lawyers are good. Companies are bad. Not all of them, but some of them. So to fight this fight, we need those legal people looking for the loopholes, looking for the regulations, looking for the things that we can grasp to buy time more often than not, sometimes to win, but mostly to buy time. And the data supports our fight. But the way to win this, the way to win this fight, whatever it is you're working on here in Western Pennsylvania, is through people power. It takes people getting up off their seat and standing up and taking risks. It takes people taking risks, not risks like I heard one of the witnesses went to jail. That's great. Not everybody has to go to jail. There are other things you can do. But it's about organizing yourselves. And the idea of the group of 10, it's a fabulous idea. It's a fabulous idea. If you had 100 or 1,000 groups of 10, do the math. I've never been good at math. You just put zeros somewhere. And if you had that many people who all could make a phone call at some time, wouldn't that make a difference? The people who are making this decision is not the people in the environmental decision-making department. They are not doing it. In Pittsburgh, it's Fitzgerald, right? It's Fitzgerald. Rich Fitzgerald? Richie Rich? I'm not making fun of him. I don't know the man. I do know, however, that he has the power. He has the power to stop the madness. He has the power. He is also elected. He needs to create another election for 2019. And he can get all the money he wants, and I'm not suggesting he does, because I really have no clue. But he can get all the money or the allocates or the golf games, whatever, from the industry, but he still has to come back to the voters. You want to change what's happening in Western Pennsylvania in the areas in which he manages, which he controls, which he is a decision maker. He is the person you guys need to focus on. Stop wasting your time, thousands of you, at public hearings where you get to speak for 3 minutes. Go see him. 1,000 of you, go see him. Tell him to stop the madness. You still have to go to those meetings, by the way. You know that, the public meetings. But don't go to the public meetings and play by the rules. Also, Fitzgerald can give you what you want in certain areas. And where those are, make him do it. Make him do it. Don't make him point and say it's not my responsibility, it's the health department's responsibility, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He appointed the health department person. They have a relationship. They know each other. They clearly had respect for one another, and he wouldn't have appointed them, right? So you can't go like this. No, you're him, he's you, you guys are friends, we know this. This is not a secret. It's public knowledge. Don't let him do it. When he appoints the health department, say, who appointed that person? Didn't you do that? Oh, yeah. Then you go talk to him. You talk to him. It's your person. You made that decision. You make them do it. When you fight these fights, they try to distract us. They try to distract us by making us look at permits for hours, to look at websites, to do all this stuff. Fact Tracker has got all that stuff covered. You don't even, there's probably nothing you have to do. You just go to their website and just ask it a question and it magically spits out this stuff. We need to spend more time in front of those who are the decision makers. Fitzgerald's not the only decision maker in this whole Western Pennsylvania, but he's a big one, right? So when you go to your public meetings or your council meetings, don't do it the way you always did it. So let me tell you what they did in Georgia. Talk about people being scared about stepping out. Women in southern Georgia. And there's a good reason for that, by the way. These women decided they were going to do that, so they went to their hearing, and they couldn't speak out because they were African American women in the South. And their tires will be cut when they get out. Their homes might be torched. And their children somehow tampered with. So it's not easy. But they figured out a way, and that's what you have to do. Think out of the box and figure out a way. Next time you're running into Mr. Fitzgerald. Or you're going to one of these public meetings where you only get 3 minutes to talk. So these women in Georgia, they decided they were going to bring their preacher. And so it took 3 days to get to this decision. Unfortunately, I like Georgia. They spent 3 days trying to figure out how they could do it safely and culturally proper. Because you have to worry about culture too. You don't want to turn off your own folk. So what they did is they turned out 350 people. First time 350 black people were in this meeting. The white men in front, they were shaking. They were shaking, like, oh, no, these black people here. Well, how'd they get here? They were fine people to me. So, but they really felt threatened and they really felt frightened. So I'm giving you this example because you guys don't even have this level of, or should not have this level of fear. So the preacher went up to the podium to give his 3 minutes, and he started to sing. This is Georgia, it's a Bible Belt, ladies and gentlemen. He started to sing a Bible hymn. In the South, when you sing a Bible hymn, you stand up. Oh, everybody stood up. The polluters stood up. The government stood up. Everybody stood up. And they just kept on giving their time to the preacher, who kept on singing and singing and singing. And everybody started dancing and hollering. And it was like a revival at the end. And then they all walked out together. And the guys up front is like, whoa, what just happened? Like, this is really scary. Because usually these women and people of color behave down here. And so what is the next? And that's what you have to do. You have to make them uncomfortable. What does this mean for me? So when you go to your next 3-minute hearing, don't go with your 3-minute text. Don't be the last one. You could boycott the meeting out front and just rotate people in and out so they get their slot, because we know we have to talk. I get that. But have a boycott protest out front with babies and women and buggies and stuff like that to say they refuse to allow women and children to testify first because the paid lobbyists and the paid executives and the paid scientists all take up the first 2 hours of our meeting. And so we're protesting. Can you do that? You can do that, right? It's easy, it's nonviolent, and it turns the table on them because then they don't know what to do. What do I do with this? I got to have another hearing. We got to have 3 of them. How am I going to deal with this? And guess what? They're going to invite the group to the table and say, okay, who do you want? How about if we give you guys the first hour? We'll take the second hour. They'll negotiate with you at the table. You have become a powerful group that can impact a decision. And it's simple. All you have to do is protest out front and let people come in and out and deliver their stuff. Not that anybody pays attention anyhow to what people are saying. The other advantage is you get the media's attention, because that isn't done in Pennsylvania. You can do that in New York. We don't do that in Pennsylvania. We're polite people. And so the media is going to pay attention to it, and the media will carry your stories. Moms and children upset because they cannot speak first and put their children to bed, feed their families, right? Use the human element of our fight, not the data, not the legals, but the human element of our fight to go and fight them. So our fun thing that we did do, somebody asked to talk about hostages, but I'm not going to do that. One of the fun things we did, just as an example of how to get the person in power to notice you, was our mayor, Michael Laughlin, couldn't do anything, he said. It was too big. It was too whatever. And we were asking him just to pass a resolution, a letter of support to the state government. He said no. So everywhere Michael Laughlin went, we went. Michael Laughlin is a very serious Catholic. And so he went to the same fish fry every Friday night. And we went to that fish fry. So you had to do a little reconnaissance. We took over the restaurant several times on Friday night. And we all sat around the table that he usually gets. And then when he came in with his family to have a lovely Friday fish fry, we started talking about the child that just went to the hospital with asthma. Very loudly. We talked about all these things, and he got really mad. He like slams his fist on the table and he walks out. And we're like, yeah. Because like we're all here today at this meeting and this is great, but wouldn't you rather be bowling? Fishing? I don't know. I don't know what you got to do. I like to bowl. Wouldn't you rather be doing that? No, our lives have been disrupted because of this. And why should they only meet with us on their calendar? Schedule a meeting. No, we're scheduling one, Fish Fry Friday, your place. We'll be there. Think about those things. So we're just about out of time. I just want to sort of restate that the difference in winning and losing has to do with people power. It really has to do with people showing up. You're not going to win it legally necessarily. You might get some little wins, but we're not going to win the war. We might win a battle here or a scrimmage there. We need everybody standing together. Do we have petitions? What happened to the petitions, Dave? Where's the petitions? Are they already? So everybody needs to pick up a petition. I don't know where it is. When Dave was saying everybody sign up to be a group of 10 leader or part of a group 10, that's how you're going to win. Not just educating people by going through the materials, which is going to be important, but then start building relationships. Relationships with each other, relationships with these groups of 10, find more people and coordinate the struggle, coordinate the fight. Democracy in this country, ladies and gentlemen, is actually still alive, and it works. Love Canal was all democracy. We had nothing. We had $10,000. That's all we had. We didn't have Superfund. We didn't have regulations. Shoot, we didn't even have a law that says you can't dump things in the ground. We had nothing. But we won that fight because we did not back down. And we did things out of the box. Every time you participate, the way they want you to participate, the way they expect you to participate, your strength is just decreased. Again, I'm not talking about violence, I'm talking about thinking out of the box, doing things that are unpredictable. When they come back with their studies, one of the things we do in most communities is we know it's garbage in, garbage out, only meet their needs. We just go and we have a little can, a paint can and a big brush. And we have a press conference before their press conference at the same place as their press conference. You don't have to call the press, they're coming. You don't have to rent the room. They got it. Right? But they're not going to cover some talking head in the front of the room, go and statistics and so. No, but they'll cover somebody standing there with a paint can and a whitewash brush and say, this study is a whitewash. This study is a whitewash. It doesn't protect this child. It doesn't protect this family. It doesn't protect this farmer. It doesn't protect whatever. The media will cover that because you got a can of paint. Don't ask me how they think. They will. They do. It's great. It's great. And you hand them before they go in your comments and the questions that's going to trip up the people inside. You don't go in. No reason for you to go in. You already had your press conference out front. Man, they get so mad when they do that. They get so mad when you do that. It just knocks them off their kilter. So think about not playing by the rules, being creative, think out of the box, take some risks. Take some risks, really risks. But more importantly, either be a leader of a group of 10 or join a group of 10, because that's what's going to make it. If you don't have the people, you can be as rude as you want or as nice as you want, but you won't have enough power behind you. We had 800 residents behind us. We turned out 550 residents at every single meeting because we had block captains, similar kind of thing. And we won because we were right. We won because we were strong. And we won because democracy in the United States of America was alive then, and I'm telling you, there is hope for you guys. It is alive today. So I'm going to stop there, and maybe we'll have some time for questions, not sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Dave said we have some time. Yay, Dave. Yes, in the back.
Government officials here justify their accepting these corporations by saying they need jobs. Everything is through the filter of jobs.
Well, the truth of the matter is that's their frame. You need jobs. Is there anybody in this room who doesn't think we need jobs? But our answer is not to try and dispel that, because it's true. We can't say they're just saying that. It's true, especially in rural communities. And so our job is to turn the narrative around to say, that is right. We want jobs, not death. We want solar farms on whatever that fellow was talking about earlier, not death. So you have to flip it. We have to agree with what they're saying is right. We're not going to convince people that we don't need jobs and economic growth. You're just not going to. But what you do need to do is figure out what is that flip of that argument for your community. Yes, we need jobs, but not death. And instead, let's talk about what kind of economic growth we can do in this community. How many people have ever said that? Good. That should be the end of our, every time they say that. Great. We don't want death. Let's talk about other economic options. It ain't the only thing out there. It's not one pizzeria in the country, right? There's lots of varieties. You know, I don't know what it looks like, but you'll know. Don't try to dispel something that's a truth. Other questions?
Were you afraid, and if so, how did you manage that?
Oh, most of the time my knees went like this. I was very afraid. I was very afraid of every step of the way, especially the first time I sat across from the governor. I was like, oh my goodness. It's like I couldn't even talk. I don't know what I said. I still don't know what I said. And then, so then my brother-in-law told me about sitting across from the governor or someone of importance. And if you get too nervous, imagine them on the toilet seat, because you really can't see anything but above here. So that helped in the seated position. But when they're standing, you know, you're afraid, but once you get through it, then you're less afraid next time. And it's really about personal growth and understanding what they're saying, that they really are not that powerful. See, I believe that they were all powerful like the Wizard of Oz, right? As opposed to we were all powerful, and they were actually that funny man behind the curtain. And so, you know, it was about doing that, just doing it and doing it and doing it until. And I you know, actually, quite honestly, I still get nervous in certain situations. You know, I think once you stop getting nervous, then you've lost your sense of listening and grounding. That you're all of a sudden in a room and you're one of them, as opposed to someone driving an issue or a conversation or something like that.
I've been to some of the Shell community meetings, their so-called community meetings, and when they have that structure where you can't ask a question and have public discourse, you have to line up behind somebody in a booth and ask a question one-on-one to the so-called experts, like Jerry was saying. What can we do about that? How can we change that?
Is this a neighborhood community meeting? Is the purpose of it for dialogue?
No, well, they say that. They say, oh, well,
I want to hear. I want to know what they say. I know what you're talking about. I've been there. But
yeah.
But they're saying this is neighborhood dialogue. They're coming to talk with the neighborhood. So I think the next time they schedule one, that you say, our neighborhood doesn't talk lined up at a microphone. That this is not the way our community has a conversation. So we want a different format. And if you don't want a different format, then you're really not looking to have dialogue with the community. I know, that's hard, right?
I like to say that.
No, you have to say it before the meeting.
This was during the meeting.
Yeah, during the meeting it's too late. You know, they already set it up. They already own the space, right? They already own the space, they already own the agenda, they already own the microphones, right? They're deciding whether to put them or not. You have to do it before the meeting, like when the next meeting is planned, you know, next month. So you go in a week early or 2 weeks early and say, this is not going to go. But you got to make sure your folks agree with you before you do that, right? Because if it's not going to go, then what is the consequence? What is the consequence to Shell? So, you know, if the consequence is that you're not going to participate, you're going to walk away. Oh yeah, good, shh, glad, right? Or, you know, so you really need to talk it through and figure out what are the consequences to the company. What are you going to do if they said, fine, don't come? What is it you're going to do? And some of your folks are still going to come because there are those folks who will come because they want to know or whatever. What are you going to do? So you need to have that all planned out before you go and talk to them. You can't just talk to them. They're never going to change it because there's no risk, there's no threat to them to not change it, right? So maybe what you do is a full page ad. I don't know how they advertise, but you know, sometimes they advertise in the paper, and when you know they're going to advertise in the paper because they got to do public notice maybe, or something like that, or you do an ad. Or you put signs around the community or where the community meeting is going to be. Our community doesn't communicate by microphones. We don't communicate in lines. You know, it's like, you know, something. You'd have to really explore it with your neighbors. Your neighbors will come up with an idea. Trust the people. Trust your people who live in your community. They are the most brilliant people ever. And they'll come up with creative ideas and you can move forward. But if you continue to only grumble when you get there, it's too late. And you've already lost that battle for that evening anyhow. Yeah. Other questions? Go ahead.
Did you consider, you talked about a group of 500 or 800 people. Did you consider asking each one of those people to tribute an amount worth one share of stock of whatever company it was, and then giving the proxy votes to one person, or each of those, all of those people going to the shareholders meeting the next year, with those having one share of stock?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We actually did go to the shareholders meeting. Occidental Petroleum at that time, chairman of the board was Armin Hammer. And Armin Hammer had his shareholders meeting on his birthday. And so when Luella Kenny is the woman who lost her 4-year-old child, came up to speak with him. He said he will not hear that on his birthday. It's his birthday. And he turned her microphone off. So you know, but we got back at him in a different way. I mean, you know, that is an avenue. What else can you do? I mean, you could go on the internet and start something that says rip up your Shell credit card. You know, you're not going to successfully do a boycott, I'll tell you that right now. But you could annoy them and put it, you know, and tell them you did it, because it's no good if you just rip it up, right? You got to tell them you did it. But there might be some things you could do like that, which would get a much larger group of people who could also impact Shell in some fashion. But shareholder meetings are really controlled and really difficult, and even when you get there with your folks, you can't necessarily have a fair hearing. We went to the Target shareholders meeting in Ohio, actually, right in Cleveland, right outside of Cleveland. We brought a 30-foot rubber duck, like 30-foot rubber duck, and we were asking Target to stop selling products that were made with a particular type of plastic called PVC because it was toxic. And the night before, we put a full-page ad. It's a nationwide coalition, so they had more money than a local group, in the newspaper, the local newspaper, calling for them to do that. So anybody who came to the Cleveland hotel to stay there for the shareholders meeting would get a paper in the morning because it was USA Today, and every hotel does it on Friday. They just do. And so they got that, and then then we put flyers under every door in the hotel. We didn't know where anybody was sleeping, but we put it under every door, so we figured we got ourselves covered. And then we handed out flyers and information at the entrance to where the shareholders meeting was, and we had somebody on the inside. And that's really expensive, a lot of work. And yes, Target did move away from PVC in their name products, but it was an awful lot of work. And I'm not sure with that amount of work and money, if it wasn't a national campaign to change marketplace, it would have been worth it. It was fun, though. We had fun. Okay, one last question, and then we have to close.
How did you create community support for your efforts?
Good question. How did I create community support? So if you know Niagara Falls, you know that 98% of my community worked in the chemical industry that we were fighting. So when you talk about don't bite the hand that feeds you, you know, that's a real problem. But the community support really came from people realizing that, first of all, their children's health was at risk, their family's health was at risk, their property values, which they really cared about, especially those who didn't have small children, was now worth zero, right? So you can't sell it, you can't stay in it. And then finally, the other thing that was really helpful is that the unions were very involved. At that time, it was the Oil, Chemical, and Atomics Union, OCAW. Yeah, is that right? Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers. That's what it is. And they were doing training in Niagara Falls for like 2 years prior to this about chemical exposure and workers' health. It was a huge program with Tony Mazzocchi and others. And so all of the workers in the plants knew what these chemicals did. So this one fellow said to me, oh shoot, I got this chemical in my basement and I get paid 25 cents extra per hour to be in a place with this chemical in the plant, right? So they got that. So we didn't have to convince them about the toxicity and all that stuff. They already understood that. So that was really helpful. But it really was about how it impacted them. And yes, they wanted their jobs, and yes, the industry did the same thing the lady was talking about in the back, threatening to leave. They're all going to Akron, Ohio, by the way. Everybody in Niagara Falls is threatening to leave because there's jobs versus environment. They're all moving their plant to Akron, Ohio, which I don't quite get, but that's where they're going with it. And, you know, we knew that they weren't leaving. When you invest $10 million in your plant, you're not going to up and truck, right? It's just not going to happen. And so the unions also helped us to sort of uncover that so that the workers and the families would understand the industry is not going to leave because they just made this huge investment. So it was really about working with people and really talking through, helping them understand. And again, it's really about relationship building. People trust one another because they had the commonality. And we got support. We also got support from our churches and our faith leaders and so many others. One of the things you guys might want to try to do is we had like a resolution that faith institutions and other townships and different groups, breast cancer awareness groups and stuff like that, all could sign. So it showed that we even had more power behind us than the physical bodies in the room. So that was really helpful too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.